panning guitar tracks can be either really easy or really hard depending on what your objective is. Now let's take the band Van Halen as an example. There was only one guitar player in Van Halen, and his guitar track, or at least the rhythm guitar track, was always panned all the way over to the audience left-hand side, and the solos were put in the center. But I always thought that was a little bit weird because Eddie Van Halen actually stands on the audience right-hand side of the stage. But I realized that they probably did that because when the typical Van Halen listener is tooling down the road in their Camaro and they're listening to their favorite Van Halen record, that speaker is going to be very close to the driver of the car. So I think that's why they put all of Eddie Van Halen's guitars all the way over hard left. But other bands that have multiple guitar players, like AC/DC or Judas Priest, they have two guitar players, so they pan their guitars left and right. But in this particular project, I actually have 15 tracks of guitar, and you may be asking yourself, why would you ever need 15 tracks of guitar? Well, I actually did it as an example of different microphones placed on a guitar amp at different axes, whether they were on axis or off axis. So let's solo the guitar group channel, and then I'm going to drag this little window over to see all 15 of those guitar tracks. Actually, I can't see all 15 of them all at once, but here they are in all of their glory. So we're actually only going to use 6 of these 15 guitar tracks, so I'm going to show you how to get rid of the tracks that you know you're not going to use. So I'm going to bounce back to the project window, and I'm going to go to the guitar folder, and let's just disable the tracks that we're not going to use so that we don't have to worry about muting them. So I've decided that I'm going to keep the SM57 track on axis, but get rid of the SM57 off axis, and also get rid of the Beyer M88 on axis, but keep the one that was off axis. And then I also had an Audio-Technica 4033 on the cone of the speaker, and I'm going to not use that as well. So those are the first takes of the guitar. Now I'm going to use my mouse wheel to scroll up, and I'm going to get rid of the same microphones on the second take. So I'm going to get rid of this, this, and this. And then for the guitar solo, those are the last 5 tracks, and I'm going to get rid of the exact same microphones here. So now that I have all of those selected, and I made multiple selections by holding down the Control or Command key while I was clicking on those tracks. So that's how you can select multiple tracks. Then I'm going to right or Control click on any of those selected tracks. I'm going to come down here close to the bottom of this submenu and choose Disable Track. That's going to disable those tracks from the project, and now we won't hear them and I won't have to mute or solo them. And then I'm going to close that folder up, and I'm going to go back to our mix console by typing F3. And now when I come to those guitar tracks, you can see that they have been vastly diminished in number. So this is going to be much easier to work with. So I have 2 different guitar takes. Now this is called double tracking. So what I had the guitarist do was play through the track and record one time through, and then I rewound, made new tracks, and had him record the exact same thing twice, because my objective with this particular song was to create or simulate the sound of 2 guitar players, one over on the left and one over on the right, and that double tracking makes a big wall of guitars. So I've got all of those guitar tracks soloed. Let's listen to them in their current mono positioning. See, that's not very interesting yet. So what we're going to do is start to pan these tracks over to the left and right. So these first 2 tracks are the first take, so I'm going to pan them hard over to the left-hand side. And you can hear that we're already getting a big wall of guitars. Now I'm going to take the other 2 guitar takes, I'm going to pan them over to the right. So now we've got a big wall of guitars. Let's listen to the difference between the mono and stereo versions by going to our control room setting right here. This is stereo. So the stereo imaging of those tracks actually makes it sound like two guitar players were playing at the same time, just like two guitar bands like AC/DC and Judas Priest. So one guitar player sounds like he's on the left-hand side, and the other guitar player sounds like he's on the right-hand side, except that they're the exact same guitarist, but I double-tracked them, so I had them play two different tracks at two different times. So you can't just copy and paste the same performance. You really have to do two separate recordings to get this sort of double tracking sounding really good. And then lastly, I've got that guitar solo. Now, these solo tracks are panned center right now, and that's probably where we will continue to pan them. But let's listen to the guitar solo and see if panning those tracks might do a cool thing for us in the stereo mix. So let's take a listen. No, I like them dead center, so we'll go ahead and hold down the Control or Command button and click on the faders. So we like having the guitar solo in the center position. So that's how you could create a wall of guitars. But if you have one guitar player in the band and he wants to do sort of a Van Halen thing where they don't do any double tracking and they take the track or tracks and place them either on the far left or the far right or anywhere in between, you could certainly do a treatment like that as well. But now that we have the guitars panned apart, let's listen to them in context with the bass and the drum tracks. So I'm going to solo those group channel tracks. We'll take a listen to how the mix sounds so far. Now the guitars are a little loud, so let's back those off a little bit. Let's listen to it in mono. So by panning those guitars apart, we really get a much richer experience for the listener of our Cubase project.